So my name's Chris, first name. Gender pronouns are he, him, his. Do I feel a part of the LGBT community and seen and heard? I would say that yes, I do, but it depends upon like the spaces that I kind of patronage. I'm gonna be honest, if I go to more so non-Black spaces, not really as much. But today, now, this space, I do feel seen and heard. When did I first feel proud of being in my skin? So I would say that really depends. If you're talking about being like more so of a bit of a darker skinned person, that's different. I would say that's probably when I went to visit Mexico and they were like all crazy over dark skinned people over there. That was like the first time, that was 2016, and I was like maybe what, 25, 26 then? So I would say that was probably the first time I felt like, oh my gosh, like Black is like beautiful here. And then that was reinforced when I went to Europe, like a couple months later. And that was kind of really interesting. But in terms of being gay, I feel like that's still a bit of a work in progress. I mean, I'm way better than I was when I was younger, but I mean, I think there's still some things I can work on. It's a journey. To me, family means, I want to say like a lot of support and love unconditional. And it's really interesting to talk about that topic because it's kind of like, you know, being Jamaican, homophobia runs rampant, especially with my family. So it's kind of like having to navigate what family is, what it means, especially when it comes to your sexuality. I feel as if when it comes to what I consider family, my sexual orientation has been at the forefront of who's accepting and who's not. I don't know if that's the healthiest thing, but I would say fully accepting me has been the biggest thing that I've attributed to what family is and isn't. When dating, I don't think race is a determining factor because, you know, being Jamaican, like, we have all different races, you know, Chinese, you know, like I guess Asian, you know, Southeast Asian, there are white Jamaicans too. It was more so mainly emphasis on whether or not you can fit in with the culture, I would say. So race wasn't really that big of a thing, even though there was colorism in the culture, race wasn't really that much of a factor. So I'd have to say that race kind of isn't. But if I do date someone outside of my race, my expectation is that they understand or willing to learn about Black issues, because that's going to be a problem if we are like at a major disconnect with that thing. As for HIV status, not so much, don't really care about that. Would like to know, but you know, hey, studies are now showing that if you are undetectable, then, you know, chances of you passing it on are probably like negligible at this point. So as far as I'm concerned, not a big deal. If anything, it'll probably be more of a preference to be someone who's HIV positive and knows and is on meds. That's just my 2 cents. And on top of that, there's also, you know, PrEP and, you know, other things that you can do to kind of prevent, you know, any sort of, I guess, being infected or getting the disease. So I don't think it's that big of a deal now anymore. Ooh, biggest threat. The biggest threat for a queer person of color, and I think of color is kind of like the big thing we need to focus on. I feel as if even though there's all types of discrimination that takes place, I feel like for people of color it's different because you can be discriminated within your own community. So within the gay community, there's discrimination in terms of non-people of color and also people of color. So you could have this feeling of not belonging anywhere. You can't belong to your own family. So for example, like I'm Black, but Black people have an issue with me, especially with being Jamaican. And then I go into queer spaces and then, you know, that are predominantly white or just non-Black, to be quite honest. And then I also face discrimination there as well. I think that level of not being accepted anywhere can be a very large mental and emotional hindrance. So I think that is probably the biggest thing that we face. I think my biggest fear as a Black gay man, and I actually have never really given thought to this, but I think it's kind of more so that that loneliness, not being accepted, feeling as if you aren't heard, depending upon the spaces that you occupy. You know, being Black is kind of one thing, right? And then we talk about racism, but then within racism, there's anti-Blackness, which is an entirely different issue. And so I feel as if my biggest fear is kind of attempting to have my own like thoughts of success, whatever that is, and facing all these obstacles, not only because of being, queer, but also being a person of color. I guess like the double whammy is kind of what I'm afraid of. 3 things I never leave home without are ID, debit card, and cell phone. So what success means to me, that is very interesting because I feel like success is very interpersonal. I don't think that one person can really define it. It depends upon what that person kind of feels. Now, if I were to say for me, I would say what your own personal goals are, what you're able to achieve and accomplish. But I would say there are a couple of things that I think should be universal. I would say financial stability. You don't have to be a millionaire, but I think it's difficult to really pursue anything else if you're struggling financially. That's kind of like the biggest thing in our capitalist system that you kind of want to make sure that you have, I guess, in order. I would say health would be the second thing. Can't do anything if you're unhealthy. And I would also say that spiritual, mental, and physical, like satisfaction would be the next thing. I think those 3 things are kind of the main pillars, but for everyone else it's different. Preteen. So I'm thinking my preteen self, what I would tell them, I'm thinking 11, 12, maybe 13. I would say keep going. You're doing a good job. Follow the rules. Don't be afraid to take some extra chances in things that you're interested in. But, at the same time, I kind of feel like everything happens for a reason. So I may tell my preteen self something and then fast forward like 20 years later and I have all types of problems because I told them like do something crazy. So I would say stick to what you're doing. You're doing great. And overall, it gets way, way better.